Double-double. We start off with Point Park's top performer on the hardwood. Pioneers undefeated, Point Park Dance remains on top over the weekend. All of that and more. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Good evening and welcome to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm Taylor Spirito. Tonight we start things off on the hardwood. The Point Park men's basketball team split both of their games, beating Ohio Christian earlier in the week but then falling to WVU Tech over the weekend. They currently have a record of 6-8. Meanwhile, the women's basketball team won both of their games, the first being Ohio Christian and the latter being Carlo. They currently have a record of 5-3. And something new for our show is our Pioneer Player of the Week. This week we showcase Taylor Wren. She dropped a double-double in each game this past week. The sophomore has started 7 of the 8 games while averaging over 20 points a game and almost 14 rebounds per game. After the break, our reporter Cameron Wilson will sit down with 2 members of our undefeated dance team. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Point Park Competitive Dance competed 3 times over the weekend. To discuss their success, we bring in Elena Troya and Nicole Capalco. Ladies, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Cap.
Thank you.
So to start off, we hinted it earlier in the broadcast, but let's start with Friday. 7 schools competing. How'd it go, Elena? How'd it go?
It was actually pretty good. So we went like 2 rounds. So it was like, you know, a little tough. But at the end, like we did it. We got our scores, and we are happy to come up at first place.
So Nicole, she touched on the scores. You went and set their highest score of the season at over 85 points, beating out Siena Heights. That had to feel great. What was it like knowing Friday you hit that top peak score of the year so far?
It was definitely a great feeling because going into regionals, you want to have your highest scores of the season. And so that was definitely a big deal for us, knowing that we could hit a peak of our season and could only go up from there.
And then Sunday, you returned back, compete again, 2 rounds. You mentioned a little bit of the break in between. What's it like? Is it difficult in between rounds, like to stay focused, stay locked in? How do you stay prepared?
Right. So usually, since now it's like virtual, Our breaks are a little hard actually because usually like when we're in person, we just go, we warm up, we go, we warm up again and go. You know, like virtually we're like here in school, so we're like relaxed and like, you know, it's like more informal, you know, so it is kind of hard because I don't know, like we're at home, so it doesn't feel like much of a competition, but we know that we have to like get into it and get into focus and do all our skills and stuff. So yeah.
Do y'all miss the road trips? I mean,
Yeah.
it's bonding time.
It's so fun. It's definitely so fun. Just like knowing you're getting on the bus with your whole team and it's time to go. Like it's time to compete. Like we're all focused and ready to go. It's
Yeah, it
definitely
definitely makes a difference too, like traveling, like having an audience to like perform to, because here we're just at the gym, like with our camera and our coach. So like it's really difficult actually.
So you touched on it a minute ago. How does it feel knowing you're undefeated, completely on top right now, going into regionals at the end of the month?
It's a great feeling actually, knowing that we're undefeated. We've had a great season so far, and I think honestly we're just really excited and ready to work hard these next few weeks going into regionals and nationals.
And nationals, so you heard it here.
National.
When we
And
come back, Natalia joins us for all things national. Don't go anywhere.
Forty percent of food in the United States is never eaten. At the same time, 1 in 8 Americans is struggling to put enough food on the table. Before you let your food go bad or throw your leftovers in the garbage, think about your options. To learn more about food waste and how you can reduce food waste at home, visit www.nrdc.org/issues/food waste.
Welcome back to Sideline. To discuss everything you need to know in national sports news, we bring in Natalia Hillen. Natalia, what do you got for us?
Thanks, Taylor. To start, we take a look at the Houston Texans. They released superstar J.J. Watt after 10 years. Going into 2020, they traded arguably one of the best wide receivers in the league, DeAndre Hopkins, and have been on the hot seat with quarterback Deshaun Watson, requesting a trade. It will be interesting to see what happens in Houston and to see if JJ will join both his brothers in the black and gold. And in NASCAR, Michael McDowell won the Daytona 500 on the last lap, followed by last year Cup champion Chase Elliott. The race started at 2:30 Eastern Time, but 16 laps in the Big One hit, affecting 16 cars and leading into an over 6-hour rain delay. Sunday, the drivers returned to Daytona for the road course. That's all for national. Now let's send it back to Taylor at the desk.
Thanks, Natalia. After the break, we debate. We'll be back. welcome back to Sideline. It's time for everyone's favorite segment, the Case of the Week. The NHL season is about a third of the way over, and we're here to discuss who our favorites are for the season thus far. I'm joined today by Ray Hazenstab, and Cameron Wilson is back in studio. So, guys, I mean, me and Ray, the NHL is kind of our thing. You're just kind of here. Yeah. So we'll start with Ray. Who are your favorites that you're looking out for this season? Obviously, we're all Penguins fans here, but
I'm actually going to go in the same division because the Flyers and Islanders don't look like they've lost much of a step since they had that playoff run last year. The Flyers had a bit of a rough start with Carter Hart not starting out very well. The Islanders also had a bit of a slow start, but they seem to have found form. They found the rhythm, and they're back to especially with the Islanders, they're back to the four-line machine that crushed all but Tampa last year in the East.
All right, Cam, who are you looking at?
For me, I've been thinking about it all day, actually. Between Carolina with Aho, or even the Penguins, that top line, Crosby, Gensel, Rust. But I'm actually going to go Colorado with McKinnon. McKinnon's going to lead Colorado. They're fourth right now in their division, but they're going to make a little bit of a run. Phoenix, or Arizona, I should say, probably going to fall off. And I think Colorado, they might slide in as like the 2 in their division, and they'll surprise some people in the postseason.
I don't think so. To me, as I was discussing with Taylor beforehand,
Because my pick is Colorado.
Is
But that's a spoiler alert. We'll talk about that later on.
as I was discussing with Taylor before we got to the show, when they lost Nikita Zadorov in the offseason, to me they lost some of that fire, some of the protection that they had for McKinnon, for Landeskog, for the top line, because Zadorov was a great enforcer, and he was usually paired with like a Cale Makar. They could use Zadorov was basically the setup guy for the McKinnons, the Makars, the Landeskogs, or even the Rantanens.
So why did you think Colorado?
I mean, yeah, they lost their enforcer, but I would argue that in today's NHL, you don't necessarily need an enforcer. It's preferred, but you don't need one specifically. When you have the generational talent like McKinnon, and you have Landeskog, and Cale Makar has proven to be one of the best defensemen in the league, despite, I should say, how old he is. He's not even in his prime yet, and he's just going to keep building and building and building. And yeah, they're fourth in their division right now, but it is the top 4 teams in each division that make it to the playoffs. And they've proven, they remind me of a Tampa, because Tampa was so close so many times, and then they just could never capitalize on it. And right now, Colorado is in that position, in that they're just there. It's just whether they can pull it off or not.
I'd argue that because with Tampa last year, yes, you had Kucherov, yes, you had Cirelli, but you also have balanced out with guys like Maroon, who could play the two-way game and be physical. You had Chernak, who was a great disturber for the other teams and trying to throw them off their game, and you had their big physical presence all around, which proved to be a threat for anybody except for themselves, I'd say.
And Tampa is another one of those teams that's proven themselves over and over and over. And you mentioned 2 of my Erie Otters boys, so I can't really argue with you on that one. I don't think that they're going to be back-to-back. I really don't think so. I think that all of those years leading up to them winning the Cup, those were their years to win the Cup. And now I think they could still pull it off, but I don't think that's in the cards. I don't want to see it.
I mean, I'm going to sound like the homer here, but you've got to be interested with what the Penguins are doing. They're still winning games. They're injured. They lost pretty much every defenseman. Pojo, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, comes up, he steps up.
What did you call him?
Pojo.
Okay.
You got to love Pojo.
Okay.
It's a new thing. We're starting it. Trust me, it's a hashtag and everything. Pierre-Olivier Joseph steps in, plays great with Marino. They hire Hextall, come in as the new GM. They're rebuilding a front office mid-season. They've won their last 2. The Capitals dropped their last 4. Penguins are going to slide in. I don't think they have it enough to win the Cup with the window closing with Crosby and Malkin, but it's going to be interesting to see them when they slide. They might slide into that postseason.
Wait, can I also be that person and talk about the Canadian division? Because they are a dumpster fire in a good way, because everything is just happening all at once in that division, and it's proven to be as hyped up as it should have been.
There's only one team I'd argue that's not really in contention. That's
Vancouver.
Ottawa.
Oh,
Ottawa.
Because
yes.
Vancouver
has been
underwhelming.
dropping the ball, but we
They've been-
knew Ottawa was going to be bad.
They've been underwhelming, but they've had a lot of poor performances, and they've faced some difficulties in with everything gelling. But at the same time, they're in a very tough division where they have to leapfrog Calgary, they have to leapfrog Winnipeg, they have to deal with Toronto, and in my opinion, it's a bit of a surprise, Montreal.
Well,
So
the
they're
thing
doing
is,
well.
Vancouver should be one of those teams that they have to leapfrog. And the fact that Vancouver isn't in that discussion right now, especially after last season and literally how good they were after they've gotten Holtby, especially one of the best goalies in the league, like he should have built momentum from that team. And they've just really dropped the ball this season. I'm very underwhelmed and not impressed by how Vancouver has performed this year.
I agree.
I agree.
It's just, and you gotta love it's all Canada.
I
The whole
do.
Canadian
I
division.
do love it.
Like that's kind of neat. Like
And Montreal has been really good, and I wasn't expecting that. I knew they were going to be probably like middle of the pack because of how upset or how much they upset the Penguins last year in the qualifiers. But I didn't expect them to be as good as they actually are.
Another team that's kind of surprised me that's come out of the blue has been Chicago. They have the new goalie Lankinen with a .925 save percentage and no Jonathan Taves, but they're still in contention for that division. Wow.
Yeah, and I just want to put out real quick, my Leafs are doing me well this year.
except for their 5-1 loss last night.
We don't talk about that anymore. Okay, so real quick, before we wrap things up, last one. Who do you see winning the Cup this year? It's a little early on, but I still think that there are some clear contenders in there.
Even though I mentioned the four-line machine of the Islanders, I still have gut feeling that Philly is going to find a way. They ran into a very tough team last year in the Islanders. Something tells me that woke them up.
Cam?
Surprisingly, the Florida Panthers. They're second in their division right now. They want it so bad at this point.
Agreed.
Real underdog
They got
pick.
Patrick Hornquist.
Oh, I miss him.
He's a monster for them right now. He changed that team's dynamic,
And Duclair.
and Duclair as well. I think they're ready.
What about you, Taylor?
I mean, my pick I said before. I think this is Colorado's year. If not this year, then certainly next. I think it's about time Nathan McKinnon has a cup on his, you
That's
know.
my
I was going to say on his shoulders, but
He's gonna
that's
raise it?
not. Yeah, it's about time Nathan McKinnon got to raise a cup. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you both for joining me, and thank you back home for joining us this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and of course, the same Pioneer Sideline.